Lying is the art of not telling the truth, saying a statement believed to be false in the hopes of deceiving someone. A liar is usually signalled by their pants being on fire. But there's a knack to it that not everyone has, and for our purposes here on Phenomena, there are a whole bunch of board games that have made a plaything out of telling porkies. They're called social deduction games, but what do you do in that case if you're not good at lying but you want to play them? As a seasoned liar, little secret, my name's not actually Laurie, here is some advice. Check for obvious evidence before you start a lie. I didn't eat the cookie. I didn't murder him. No, I didn't murder the cookie. Don't go too big or too fantastical. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ollie, I can't come into work today because, I'm dead. I died. Yeah. So yeah, just got this sponsorship deal for L'Oreal shampoo for long, luscious hair. Right. I have lost my virginity, actually. And make sure you say and sell everything like it's the truth. Yeah, we'll definitely cook a nice meal and not order pizza. Of course I think your family's great. Adam Blampied is the greatest YouTuber who ever lived. Right, so now we've limbered up for a bit of lying, why not roll with me as I explain social deduction games. In its simplest form, social deduction is about trying to work out which one of your friends is a secret bastard. Social deduction has been around for ages, going back as far as games like Wink Murder and Murder in the Dark. Combining death, deception and betrayal in this sanitized setting has always been thrilling. The lights go out, an unknown figure slips a note into your pocket, you open it up to reveal that you've been slaughtered by being crushed by wangs. The most popular form of social deduction games usually involve large groups of players, often more than 5, some of whom have a secret role or agenda and are often working against the rest of the players to sabotage their goals or just survive undetected. Kind of like my relationship with WrestleTalk. Now, most of the time there are fewer evil players than there are good ones, and they often know who each other are, whereas the good player's primary objective is to root out which one of them's the big old f*** and stop them before they mess up all the plans. Now, because of their large number of players and their simple us versus them goals, social deduction games have also crossed over into the realm of party games. Games like Secret Hitler and Two Rooms with a Boom have become very popular in party settings. Secret Hitler can field up to 10 players, while Two Rooms with a Boom can go up to 30. Who even knows 30 players? Who can even remember what 30 people actually looks like? I'm going to Google it. 30 people. Oh, it's like one person 30 times. Cool. The godfather of social deduction games, Dmitry Davidov, probably described it best. He said that at their core, social deduction games are about an informed minority versus an uninformed majority. And on that, we're going to jump straight into the example you've heard of section of this video, because to understand the psychology behind social deduction games, you need to understand Mafia. Mafia was created in the olden days of 1986 by Dmitry Davidov, who was working at the psychological department of the Moscow State University, and it was primarily used as a teaching aid when examining visual psychodiagnostics or the interpretation of body language and non-verbal cues. There have been whole academic papers published about the strategies used to play Mafia and its lycanthropic follow-on Werewolf, with entire studies dedicated to the tactics that guilty and non-guilty players use to defend themselves. In the case of my friendship group, it's one player shouting, that is bullshit, at the top of his voice to cover up the fact that he's the one who's actually lying. Which is interesting because from an academic foundation, Mafia was created entirely to answer the question, how do you lie?
For me, the best play is to always be authentic to yourself, which I know sounds a bit like a self-help tape, but it is true. If you can do a thing that you think makes sense, not externally, but internally, and you are able to articulate that, you will be perceived as trustworthy. So when I am innocent, I'll be quite like, okay, we gotta hunt the werewolves, we've got to play really well. So when I'm a werewolf, I will also do that, but just slightly less well. I can't do the whole, you have to be still, for me, I have to still be playing the game really well, or as well as I can. Otherwise, people are like, well, you're not contributing what's going on. So I will be a werewolf and I will absolutely play the game as well as I can, but I'll just get a couple of bits of information wrong and try and direct the same logic to someone that it doesn't apply to, so that the arguments are sound, but just the final bit, I'll push it to some person B instead of person A. And if people aren't paying attention, they'll be like, yep, story checks out. I'm like, yes, exactly.
10 years later, Mafia was reskinned by Alexander Plotkin with a different theme, and it may be the version of the game you know. That game is called Werewolf. They both function the same way, and they're both in the public domain, so creators have free license to flood the market with as many Werewolf Mafia games as they want, and they have. Now, the rules of Mafia have been added to over the years, with extra roles having extra powers that affect the game in different ways, but these are the rules in their simplest form. Let's say this is a 15-person game. 5 of them are mafiosi who know each other, 10 are ordinary citizens who don't know anything, like anything at all, like completely normal regular citizens. Then there's also a moderator who isn't on either team and helps run the game. There are 2 phases, day and night. At night, everyone closes their eyes and the mafiosi open theirs and they decide silently who they are going to kill. Then during the day, everyone opens their eyes and the moderator explains quite politely that somebody has been killed, and then everyone discusses who they think is evil. It is the guy saying that is bullshit. Every single time. So yeah, during the day everyone throws around accusations or they protest their innocence and they eventually decide who they are going to kill and they vote on it. Once the vote's been taken, that person reveals their true allegiance, either good or bad, and the whole thing starts again until one team is eliminated, and that means that the other team has won. It's brilliant, addicting, and reveals a lot about people's characters, so no wonder it's spread like wildfire. The Hungarian branch of Mensa even put together a task force to go around the world and teach people the game. Official Mafia clubs were even set up in China, and these late-night clubs had electronic scoreboards and loud music blaring to cover up any audible cues given away during the night phase. The game also became one of the first large social games to fully take advantage of internet forums or email, with players messaging each other in secret and a moderator keeping track of votes and phases. Even now, the game is popular online. There are apps like Werewolf Online, as Werewolf has become the default version of the game in much of the world, and even a VR version where players sit around a campfire and, depending on which role they are, can see players as humans or werewolves. And one of the sleeper streaming hits of 2020, Among Us, takes this concept and adds in video game components, where a team of crewmates aboard a spaceship or planet base try to carry out routine tasks, while a team of imposters attempt to sabotage them. If either team manage to kill all of the other team, then they win, but the imposters manage a sabotage that the crew don't fix in time, then you gotta chalk one up to the aliens. But the real tie to Mafia and Werewolf is the ability to, strap in Call of Duty kids because you are going to love this bit of the game, call meetings. Woo yeah, oh mama. And the whole point of the meetings is to discuss who you think might be the imposter. To help in the decision, they can review things like security camera footage or check the logs on doors or just generally argue over who saw what and where, and that is bullshit. Once the vote is decided, the player is then ejected from the map and they die in the game. An important distinction. Werewolf also became a huge hit in the tech industry, becoming a staple of conventions like South by Southwest, eTech, and the Game Developers Conference, with games developer Frank Lantz saying it sanctions a lot of titillating social behaviour, flirtation, confrontation, betrayal. Even the way it condones bold eye contact and the frank scrutiny of others' behaviour is hot, especially if you don't get a lot of these things in your regular social diet. There's also the intoxicating appeal of power and knowledge as that power. Knowing something that no one else knows and using it to your advantage is right at the core of what makes Mafia and Werewolf such delicious and addicting games to play. Now, as Werewolf has developed, extra roles have been added for the good team to give them more knowledge and therefore more power, like the Seer, who once per night can check the allegiance of any player around the table. That is, so long as the werewolves don't work out who they are and kill them immediately. But it goes beyond that, because it's not just the knowledge of whether or not you're an evil or good player in the specific round of the game you're playing right then, it's the knowledge of the other players and what they're like generally. Because if you know another player better than other players know them, you know their tics and their quirks, and you know when they're lying, then that's information that you can trade like a broker, which means that even if you're playing a vanilla good character, social deduction games have levels of appealing power dynamics that get deeper and even more tangled the more that you play. Because what if that player realizes that they know that you know them, and they try to use what you know about them against you without you knowing it? So they're saying, you know me, I'm innocent, believe me, but they don't know that because that's not what they actually are. And you think, well, I know them, they must be innocent. And suddenly you're pleading their innocence to the entire group because you know them, but actually what you knew was that they were trouble when they walked in, and now you're lying on the cold hard ground.
These are my favorite games. Normally, like, you've got your friends, you care about your friends, but you never really get a chance to screw them over or stab them in the back. You would be friends. But in social deduction games, you can take all these skills that you shouldn't normally use in real life, and you can apply them to a game. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, social deduction games can also be a bit of a fun one for a party and a big group. But again, you can run into kind of groups that play that game a lot, kind of driving the way you play them. So sometimes a bit weary of getting into those types of games, but I do think they're a lot of fun. I think Werewolf, Avalon are great intros to that. And then there's some really good newer games that are a bit more complex and a bit more fun as well.
I'm going to be brutally honest about social deduction games. I personally do not like them. They make me very, very anxious. I have many brilliant stories from social deduction games. I've had good times with social deduction games, but for me personally, I'm already too anxious of a person, and I don't need that extra level of I'm lying to my friends and all of my friends are lying to me too, and I can't trust anyone.
Social deduction takes that principle and then allows you to just be really treacherous, really sneaky, really suspicious, all of these behaviors that are fairly frowned upon in the day-to-day if you were doing it in the office, but it gives you this safe space to be really sneaky in a way that I find so enjoyable, not only to do myself, but to watch other people. Like I've played Werewolf with so many people over the years, including my grandparents, and they were 89 at the time, and they got super into this game. And my granny was really sneaky, and my granddad, when he turned out to be the werewolf and he won, gave this massive roar. This is a man who I've never seen emote more than like, all right. Then he's giving this huge like werewolf performance, and it's like allowing people to try on these behaviors and show different sides of themselves.
Which is not to say that social deduction games don't have some red flags to talk about. As pointed out by some of our guests, they have a tendency to get a little bit...
Stop talking over him! Just let him talk!
Heated. Because it's all too common for games of Werewolf to start with the social veneer of roleplay, everyone joking and laughing and stabbing each other in the back and being like, oh, you shouldn't trust Karen because she's a sneak. But things have a way of taking a turn, and that is not an assumption, that is science. Isn't that right, Karen? In Davidov's own words, and this is coming from a psychology teacher, remember, when people are accused of being a mafioso or a werewolf, they tend to employ, quote, objection rather than shock, as it's psychologically very difficult to mimic emotion. So emotion turns into aggression, as that is one of the easiest things to fake. So yeah, people get angry. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Battlestar again. Which isn't to say that the heated discussion isn't actually part of the fun, but if you're not a fan of yelling, then it's definitely something to keep in mind. Because social deduction games can lead to fights, because everybody has different principles about what can be used as collateral in proving a point. Like if someone swears on their pet's life and then they're lying, like, man, I really thought you loved that hamster. Now, some people just fundamentally don't like lying, either because they're bad at it, which is actually a good thing you have to remember, or because it gets a bit stressful when they have to try to remember what they or everyone else has said as the excuses begin to pile on top of excuses and all of the voices get louder as the noose tightens. Also, we don't really like to admit this, but we're a species that has evolved to look for pattern recognition as a means of survival. So if someone is a convincing liar, maybe it's just good tactics, maybe it's an outlet for a deception that they would do elsewhere in their life, or maybe you start to draw parallels to some other aspects of their social life. Maybe they are actually a werewolf. Now that is bullshit. So basically, what makes social deduction games such a thrill is also what makes them a complete and utter social minefield. That is something that you need to be aware of if you're intending to play more of them. Because social deduction is addictive and deception is such a thrill, a lot of the mechanics of social deduction have started to bleed into other games. For example, there's something called the traitor mechanic in co-op games, and we've covered co-op games in a previous video, but games with a traitor mechanic, otherwise known as semi-co-op games, can be ludicrous fun too. Games like Dead of Winter, a brilliant game where you work together to survive during a zombie apocalypse, but one of you might be a traitor. However, there's no guarantee that you are with a traitor, and every character has their own private goal, so that adds a layer of wintry suspicion and side-eye that hasn't been as palpable since John Carter's The Thing. Speaking of which, there's a Thing board game Infection at Outpost 31, which has creatures infiltrate your team, working against you as you explore the outpost, gathering vital equipment you need in order to escape. The amazing thing here is that you know they're there and you know that they're sabotaging you, but proving it to everyone else is the tricky thing. Or there's Betrayal at House on the Hill, where players work together to explore a dilapidated manor, room tile by room tile, until the title of the game is actualized and one of the players turns on the rest, usually with the help of some otherworldly power or monster, and then everyone scrambles around and panics and usually dies, but sometimes you club together and you defeat the evil and you escape the mansion. But when it comes to pure social deduction and getting the most werewolf for your buck, gamers love this one, Avalon. Set in Arthurian legend, Avalon is very similar to the standard werewolf/mafia model. There are two teams, the good knights and the bad knights, and the bad knights all know who each other are. The good knights want to succeed on missions, the bad knights want to fail them. Missions succeed or fail based on which players go on each one, because players secretly get to vote with cards to pass or fail them. Avalon is actually the sequel to another game called The Resistance, which is the same game with spies instead of knights, but with one key distinction: a game mode which makes Avalon sing. Because in Avalon, one of the players is Merlin, and he knows who everyone is. And if you're thinking that's really easy, you can just say, he's evil, she's evil, he's evil, she's evil. But there's another wrinkle, because if the good team wins, but the bad team can identify which of the good players is Merlin, the bad team win automatically. Which means you've got this Merlin in there, and the good players don't know who they are, the bad players don't know who they are. Merlin knows who everyone is, but can't really say it because they don't want to draw attention to themselves and just throw the game. It's like if you took the moderator from a Mafia or a werewolf game and you just made them a hidden player in the game. It is so simple and so clever to just add this second layer of social deduction. It's what's made Avalon beloved by hobby gamers looking for a little more spice in their werewolf.
The extra wrinkle, as we were just saying, with Merlin is super fascinating. The idea of someone who knows the answer but has to give that information out without giving away that they are the one giving it out. I think that, again, these like multi-layered social interactions are so interesting to me, because you have to, I suppose it's a little bit like Codenames. You have to like communicate this information in a way that doesn't give away to other people that you're communicating this information. So you're kind of formulating like a mini secret language all in one quick session.
Avalon is basically Resistance, but with medieval themes, so it's my favorite game, second to Resistance. I like the fact that even though it's a board game, you don't do much with the board. It's more about, like speaking to your friends and socializing, and it's best done with people you know, because then it's less about the game and how well you know your friends, their tells, what they're like. And I mean, if you know when your friends are board game, that's either gonna help you or hinder you if they play that up. So it's a really good game.
Avalon, again, that would probably be more where I go for Resistance, or Avalon where I go for social deduction rather than werewolf, unless it's like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. So Avalon's good. I have played with some groups that are very consistent about how they like to play, and I think that can kind of like the co-op be the alpha gamer situation where they're kind of leading the way they want to play it. I'd prefer to play with people that don't know what the hell's going on and everybody's kind of free fall, so you don't know if they're trying to play a tactic or something. They're just they don't even know themselves. That's a bit fun.
Social deduction games are a dark little genre in board gaming because, like so many things, deception is bad to do in real life, but utterly thrilling to do in a world without consequences. You've just got to make sure that your gaming group is ready to deal with that deception and it doesn't just automatically create consequences like stress or unease or unwanted aggression. That is bullshit. So yeah, social deduction games are not for everyone, but when they work, they're utterly brilliant. And not just because there's the giddiness to having a secret that nobody else knows, but also if you're on the other team, you get to put on your little Poirot moustache and exercise your grey cells and root out which one of you is the bastard in the midst.
Disgusting!
Thank you for watching this episode explaining social deduction games. If you like the video, give us a like, leave us a comment down below letting us know your favourite social deduction game and which member of the Phenomenerds team you think might be a werewolf. And if that whetted your appetite for social deduction games and you're just trying to get into board gaming, please do check out our top 10 list of social deduction games coming later this week. Because I'm worth it.